Hi everyone. This is our bi-weekly k8s-infra working group community call. At the beginning, I want to mention that our code of conduct, which we can summarize as be excellent to each other. If there is any topic you want to add to our today's agenda, please do so. There's still time. And is there anyone who's new and would like to introduce our call? Okay, nobody. Let's go further. We'll start with action items from the last week, last 2 weeks actually, because we did billing review last time. How is the container image promoter, Linz?
So we did a deployment of the auditor to the k8s artifacts prod project, the prod project, and it is working, but there's a slight bug where it doesn't show the actual details of unapproved images. So I need to fix that. We did a test with a dummy image to trigger that path on purpose, but so it did detect that it was not verified, but it just didn't tell you the actual details of the pub/sub message, which is pretty bad. So I need to fix that today. In other news, you might have seen the announcement yesterday that was sent out to flip the domain for the vanity domain. So yeah, that we need to work on. Well, as part of that, the backfilling has begun. The update on that is that the promoter ran fine for 2 hours. The auditor also ran fine for 2 hours, but the job was killed because Prow said that it took too long. It took over 2 hours. So on the 5th second, after the 2nd hour, it was killed. But it will run again today because we have a daily job that runs just every day as a sanity check. So that will kick in. It kicked in yesterday at 1-something p.m. Pacific time. So it will kick off again, I presume, at the same time today. So in about 5 hours time. In that window of time, I would like to fix that bug with the auditor and also probably, deploy it so that we'll see like some better logs. But for what it's worth, during the 2-hour run yesterday, it just worked as intended. Like it verified all of the thousands of images that did get promoted. It said, yeah, each one of these are verified because I see it in the promoter manifest repo, because of the merge of the backfill PR, which added like I think it's like somewhere in the neighborhood of 29,000 images. So yeah, that will run again today. I'll post updates on the channel as we go through. Yeah, that's my update.
Great. Is there anything which we can help you with?
Well, I have been working with Tim directly here. So I don't know. Do you think
is there more work? I mean, we're on the hairy edge of being done, quote, quote, done with it. I saw that Chris Nova also popped up on Twitter and was like, hey, I want to help with this. So cool. I don't know if there's a phase 2 set of work that we have queued up of, things that we'd like to fix once we get over this hurdle.
There's definitely a phase 2 because I mentioned last meeting or the one before that I have an intern coming in, so he'll have to tackle some of these longstanding issues that we have. There's plenty of work. I just can't think of them right now off the top of my head.
Okay.
But yeah.
So maybe the follow-up is to start thinking about opening a new issue or set of issues for phase 2 of the promotion process. I know like the GCS side of it is a particular problem for the release team.
Right.
So thinking about how to normalize that.
Yeah.
But really, I want to focus and get over this hurdle at the end of this month, the beginning of next month, and have a party.
That's great to hear. Okay, so from the last week, we have only the one topic, which is the migration to Terraform. And unfortunately, there is not a lot of progress. I started doing the code review of the pull request, which is standing. And I feel like we need a little bit more of the discussion for the architectural design of that kind of changes. So I will spend some time during the next week just tackling this issue. And let's jump into the open discussions. And actually, I have two topics because I started the process of moving the Perf Dash project to our new infra. And I have one question, and actually, maybe this will be a good point to start a discussion because how actually, when we put the files about how to deploy the whole project to the new infrastructure, currently, who or what is deploying this? So is it automatic or is it manual job, manual running scrap by someone, or how is it working right now?
Currently, it's manual. So I wrote some of this in the k8s.io transition, I think. You can fire up Cloud Console, get a Cloud Shell, and you get kubectl. And you can target the prod AAA cluster. And if those documentation are not good enough, then scream and we can do better.
That's actually the starting point, which I want to do is, are there current plans of automating that? Do we think about it? Or?
I would love to have us automate that. I don't think we would go so far as to say there are plans.
Okay.
Right? Like the plan to date has been to take all the things that already exist and move them over. This doesn't exist, so this would be pushing the frontier, which I'm all in favor of. But we also still don't have great answers around monitoring, and not everything has been moved over. Truthfully, I like the project. If there's enough people to do everything all at the same time, great. I would rather spend my personal energy in the next year working on getting all of the CI and scalability tests moved over rather than advancing this cost.
I agree.
Right?
Because as I told on our last meeting, I will try myself to focus on the documentation more during the next period of times. So I will spend some time digging into this and improving a little bit our documentation. So be prepared for me to poking you guys a little bit more about this. And this also is another topic from me, is the audit process, because I have a question. I want to improve the documentation for that particular topic at the beginning. So what is currently the process of the auditing? What we are auditing?
For the auditing section, so initially the goal of the audit was permissions and IAM specifically. Hippie expanded that well beyond just auditing, and it's actually very interesting to get more information. So right now it's a mishmash of things. It's mostly IAM, but not exclusively. And I would love to see us audit more, but we need to make the audit script not log the sorts of things that are typically changing, right? So IP addresses and items in a bucket and those sorts of things are probably not good things to audit. The existence of a cluster is a good thing to audit. Now you get into like the number of nodes in that cluster. Well, the cluster is auto-scaled, so that can change. And like if the auditor ran, say, hourly, would it be triggering a pull request every hour when the auto-scaling is happening? Like that seems like a bad idea. So the audit script is pretty dumb right now. What we would really want to do is look at the results we're getting from each datum and filter for the stable information. And so I've left that, I've not tackled that yet. The goal with the auditing really was to get it to run every hour or something, and anytime it detects a change, to send a pull request and make a human acknowledge, like, actually, yes, Linus is supposed to have access to this, right?
Okay, so that makes sense. Actually, it opened my eyes a little bit. And so currently, what is the result of the audit? Are these a lot of files with
Yes.
etc.? Okay, so
Right. So we need to do a first time audit. We know there's a bunch of permissions and things that are wrong today, just because we've been evolving and iterating on the process. So for example, we have an open bug. Anybody who creates a project, whoever runs the insurer staging storage, that person gets added as an owner of the project that they just created, right? So we need to actually fix the tooling to say, after you've created the project and assigned correct ownership to the admins group, that you actually remove yourself from it, right? Like we know that bug exists. So when we look at the audit log, we will see, it's not a log, the audit dump, we will see, Linus has some projects and I have some projects and you have some projects and Christoph has some projects. And so we need to fix those things. And once we do a solid audit of that, then there should not really be any deltas over time that we don't expect, right?
and that was actually very informative for me. So I will try to write a little bit more on the documentation from that discussion.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. So that's it from me, and I don't see any other topics. So let's move to just open discussion. Any questions, topics?
There's the promoter or publisher bot, which had a PR. When I looked at it last week, the PR was back in their court. I guess I could open it up again this week and see if it's changed. I haven't gotten any emails, or rather, I may have lost the emails.
No change. I also poked about that, but so far no.
Okay. So that's the only reason that the development 2 cluster exists. So we'd love to get that out. And then there's the old Google only cluster still has 2 things running in it, Node Perf Dash and Velodrome, which I have asked those 2 groups individually to figure out how to extricate themselves from the cluster. And that's it. After that, we actually sort of declare victory that our utility cluster is up and running. Now we can think about, should we have a cron job that runs the audit, right? I'm very interested in that. But to my earlier point, I also want to shift attention towards the harder problems now. Once we get the GCR thing done, I really want to see the continuous integration and the Boscos and all the stuff that ngprod and SIG testing have done moved into community hands. That's the next big goal, and maybe scalability after that.
Sounds good to me.
I am, for what it's worth, starting to poke some folks on the ngprod team about what processes we have in place to manage build clusters. I feel like that would be the least invasive way of starting to move stuff over to CNCF. Like migrating Prow itself, it's kind of unclear how we can do that without causing some downtime. But we have been moving to a model where we support different teams by having them add their own build cluster. And so just as a sanity check with this group, does it make sense for us to look in the direction of provisioning extra clusters for Prow versus having Prow attempt to use the AAA cluster? My thinking being that Prow jobs tend to be kind of noisy neighbors. And so it was unclear to me that it made sense to use the AAA cluster.
I would love to try to use the same cluster, especially for the non-sensitive stuff. Because honestly, we should be able to support that. And if we can't, then we should go back to the developer side of our jobs and say, what the heck, guys, let's make a better product. And so I would love to try. That comes with the caveat that actually I have no idea how Prow really runs. So,
right.
We will look to the folks who know that as experts.
Sure. I think down the road, having Prow itself run on the AAA cluster sounds like a good idea. as like just another app. But as far as where it schedules jobs to run, we find that it's a good idea to segregate off to different clusters just for purposes of trust.
So for trust purposes, I buy. For noisy neighbor purposes, I would like to pretend we can do better.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's so good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here. Yeah, I wish I had more of a concrete plan to tell you about right now, but I don't. I think, I believe we're in a place where Bash is still used to manage a lot of that stuff, and we're looking to see if we could transition to the use of Terraform, and hope to have more of an update for you in 2 weeks.
Awesome. The truth is, it hasn't been important, and so we haven't made it a priority. As we start to see the horizon approach on this GCR thing, we actually can expand. So,
right.
Awesome. Super excited about that.
Oh, actually, yeah. Well, related to this, so that's actually what Eric Feta is asking for. He's asking us to move off of the current trusted proud cluster for some of the promoter jobs because security reasons.
I'm not sure I buy the argument. I would like to have it. Yeah.
But that is something that's one of the things that my intern has to do. At least that's how I thought of it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I also talked a little bit during the last week the pro and the Boscos. I was trying to understand how does it work and what do we need to move it to the new infrastructure, but no luck so far.
I mean, my understanding right now is that like the easiest, least disruptive migration path would be to continue to have Prow running where it is, but start to add the capacity to schedule Prow jobs in CNCF-owned projects. So one thing that would be required for that would be to run a copy of Vasquez in CFC-owned projects.
Okay.
So I think when you're running a job and it needs to stand up an end-to-end cluster, the way it does it right now is it gets a GCP project from Vasquez and then schedules into that. And so we would need a Vasquez that's set up in the CNCF-owned project, and we'd need a pool of projects that Vasquez instance could then hand out to jobs that want to run end-to-end tests. So they could stand up their clusters in a Vasquez provisioned or managed project that lives in the CNCF space. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's yeah.
So a way we could maybe crawl before we walk there is to consider, yes, like maybe moving over some of the trusted jobs, or maybe moving over jobs that don't require standing up an entire Kubernetes cluster to run end-to-end tests. We do have a number of jobs that just run as a pod and, like run a shell script or build some Go or things of that nature. And it would probably be easier to look at moving those over first. But yes, I'm led to believe that with each build cluster, you need a Vasquez instance to go along with that, and you need GCP projects that Vasquez can hand out.
Yeah, so we started talking about Vasquez a while back, and then we just backburnered it until we got over some of the existing hurdles. So I'm happy to take it off the back burner and look at it.
Okay, so I think that there's still a lot of place to discuss this topic. I think that it was a really good starter at this point. So let's also move it further later. And is there any other topics we want to discuss today? So I don't see any, and I'm after like a 7 or even 8 hours of calls, so I'm very happy to give us like this 35 minutes back if there is no other like questions, topics for the first time.
It's just one small step. Where Linus and I have been talking with Stephen Augustus from SIG Release to figure out how release will fit into the staging and promotion process. It's not a huge topic, but he's got a PR open, and we've been sort of iterating on how we want to align that.
I think that's actually the good topic, because I'm not sure I understand the fully what is his problem current. So
I don't think he does either.
Oh.
We're uncovering things as we go. Like we found a project this week that isn't owned by Google and isn't owned by Kubernetes that holds the keys for pushing things up into GitHub. And so like, I didn't know that existed. Aaron, I agree. So we're figuring out the problem as we go. I think I have a better handle on it this week than I did last week. So it's not an urgent thing. I don't think it's actually blocking the GCR work, but Stephen wants to get it worked out.
So I discussed this also, one of the PRs or issues, I don't remember. I feel like there's so many of those created that I will ask him and I will discuss with him at the next Monday topics with SIG release meeting. So if till this time I won't have a better understanding of the problem or some better knowledge about it, I hope that it will be fixed during that meeting. So if you have any questions, or if you won't be attending that meeting or you can attend that meeting, just send me questions. I will try to work with Steven and others about it. Okay, so again, for the first time, any other questions, topics? For the second time, for the third. So thank you very much for this call. Thank you, and see you in the next 2 weeks.
Bye, everyone.
See ya. Happy Wednesday.
Bye.